Hey, Rebel Bankers, this is your host, Chris Noggle, and welcome back to the show. So I got an awesome guest here, Cole Hatter, and we're going to be talking about some unbelievable things. But you know what we're going to talk about? We're going to talk about his journey that he's gone through in real estate, his times he's fallen on his face, the times he's succeeded, and where he's at today. And then we're going to talk about his newest creation, and that's going to be how we're going to wrap this thing up. But before we get started into that journey, let's talk about all of you and your journey to becoming a Rebel Banker. We talk about this all the time, but you know what? Becoming a Rebel Banker requires you to take action. It requires you to take that first step in taking action on something. I don't care if it's reading a book. I don't care if it's listening to this podcast and immediately after getting your tickets to Cole's event or doing something that is action taking. You're not going to get anywhere gathering knowledge, gathering information, and doing nothing with it. So this podcast is about taking action and you getting yourself on the path to becoming a Rebel Banker. So with that being said, let's jump right into it. So Cole, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, bro. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So, we've come in contact a whole bunch of times, different paths, different walks, but your journey is one that we have to dive into. So what I was thinking we'd start with is just tell everybody a little bit about yourself and where you're at with your business today. And then let's take a trip back in time and tell them kind of how you got here. What was that first deal? And then how did you get to where you're at today?
Perfect. Yeah. So today where I'm at is investing in real estate. We'll get into how that started in just a moment. In real estate, I'm doing both residential and commercial, from investing in strip malls to investing in apartment buildings to fix and flipping and even some wholesaling. So kind of the whole gamut. I'm also lending money in real estate as well. So literally whatever you can do legally to make money in real estate, we're doing today. I also own a couple of other businesses. One is called Thrive, which you mentioned, which is an entrepreneurial education platform that has about 12 different products within it. Our biggest flagship event that you briefly mentioned is coming up in May in Vegas, where we get 1,500 to 2,000 entrepreneurs together for 3 days. I own a marketing agency, and then I'm bringing a few things to market right now, from a women's athletic apparel line to vertically integrating people's e-commerce businesses with our overseas relationships, inventory abilities, lines of credit, all this stuff. And we can dive into that too. So I'm diversifying. I realized about 2 years ago that I was very linear. I was just focused on Thrive and real estate. And I had all these amazing relationships of people that I would enjoy socializing with that were also entrepreneurs. And I finally said, okay, what intersections do we share where we can collaborate to create new revenue, new value for the marketplace? And I've got about 4 or 5 partnerships in the work, 2 of which will be coming to market here soon. And so by the end of this year, I'll be doing 6 things, but right now I'm doing 3.
So, when I hear that, and obviously I kind of knew a little bit about that, but when you hear that and the people listening hear that, they're probably thinking, how do you even sleep? That just seems like so many things. I mean, what do your teams look like? I mean, do you have a team of people, your strategic partners? Are they doing a lot of lifting? Or are you still like in the driver's seat driving all of these different companies?
Great question. And so as it relates to the sleep, I just don't sleep, right? No, this is what it feels like. But so to your point, it depends on where the business is. I have a key player in every business I run, because that's a question I always get. The general advice that people give out there is don't be a wandering generality, be a focus specific. Don't, he who tries to catch 2 birds ends up with none, or whatever it is, right? Or 2 rabbits chases, what is it, Confucius? He who chases 2 rabbits catches none. And so it sounds bad. Let me get a little bit clearer on that. My real estate investment business I've owned for 15 years. My dad is my business partner, the key player. And the way that the economics work of that is we pay him a salary above what I get, and then we do a 50-50 rev share. So because he is the day-to-day operator of that business, there will be days or even weeks where I don't even think about my real estate investment business, but my dad shows up 5-6 days a week to run it, to run the teams, to run the crews, to evaluate deals. And so because he puts in way more time than I do, he gets a salary beyond what I get, and then we do rev share 50-50 on the profits. My marketing agency, exact same thing. I started it, then I gave away 30% equity to my partner now, who's a partner, obviously, because he owns 30%, as well as a salary above our 70-30 rev share. So he gets a salary, 30%, he runs it. So to your point, I have a key operator. When it comes to Thrive, my wife 2 years ago stepped in as CEO of Thrive. She runs the day-to-day operations. So I'm still the guy on stage. I guess we both are really the face of it now, but I'm still kind of the prominent face. But she's the one behind the scenes negotiating contracts with all of the vendors, with the hotel, working out speaker negotiations, flights, like all that,
And
all the minutia that I just hate, she's good at. And so two things to point out. To your point, yes, I have a key operator in each. There's no way I could run them all by myself. And then number two, they didn't happen simultaneously. I would get one. It would be profitable. I would start to create, standard operating procedures. Once I had those SOPs in place, I started removing myself from each business and bringing new people in. And then eventually it got to the point where they don't need me to be a day-to-day operator anymore. I've just become kind of the visionary problem solver. And so what I always joke around is that I just spin a circle each day and focus on this business. Then once it's good, focus on the next one, focus on the next one, and kind of just do this 360 of working with my key operators and solving big problems. We were talking before you pressed record that right now we're in our biggest push for tickets for Thrive, and the coronavirus is all over the media right now. And so I'm trying to sell people a ticket to come to an event, which would require them to buy a plane ticket and a hotel room. And the media says that that's where you're guaranteed to contract the virus, right? And so there are a lot of problems need to be solved there right now. So now my attention for the last probably week or so has been really on Thrive. But luckily for me, my marketing agency, real estate business, and the other things have that key partner that are still operating them. So as a takeaway for your audience, don't go try to build 5 businesses all at once. Build one, get it profitable, get it stabilized, then slowly start removing yourself. Document everything you do so that someone else can duplicate it, almost like a franchise where everything is an SOP, a standard operating procedure. So I could teach you, anybody, Chris, you, or anyone listening, to do my job for me. Then once I realize, hey, this thing was only just basically maintenance now, then you go and start the new one if you so desire. And so because I've been an entrepreneur for 15 years, I have several businesses that are working right now. I should be clear, my record is a failing record. I've probably started 30 businesses in my career. 25 of them failed. Probably 12 of those actually cost me money. But the 4 or 5 that I've gotten right have made me millions of dollars. And so as far as, profit and loss statement, I'm way up. As far as batting average, I'm batting like an 80.
It's like Babe Ruth, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm batting like an 80. But the few times I connect, it's a grand slam and it works.
Yeah, and that's important for the audience to hear, because a lot of my audience and everybody's audience, they always see the pictures. They see the Instagram, the Facebook. They see the image that everybody wants to paint, but they don't understand the pain, the struggles, the failures that it took to get there. And how you just mentioned that, how you built one business, you put a standard operating procedure behind it, and then you went to the next one because it was just the next phase of your life. And that is, there's so much to be said about that, because I know when I first got started, I was trying to do everything. I was like the Family Guy episode where he's picking up all the candies. Ooh, piece of candy. Ooh, piece of candy. And all the events that I went to, it was always like this new thing. And I'm like, that thing could be great. So you get so segmented in your business, and every single one of your operations, suffers or fails. And it wasn't until I started doing what you're doing, where I built those standard operating procedures, put people in place, and did that. My story is very similar. I mean, the real estate's run by my wife. If I never have to go to another property, as long as I live, I will be a happy man. And then my events company and my seminar company, that's run by another person who handles that with my team. So every single thing I'm doing now is what you said, but the pain and struggle to figure that out for the average entrepreneur is exactly that. Painful. So let's do this real quick. Let's take a trip back in time and talk about your batting average and some of those hard times, those failures, because you know what? A lot of people, like I said earlier, in their journey to becoming a rebel banker, they don't get started because they're afraid to fail. And that is just it's a travesty. I mean, if you don't start because you're afraid of failing, then you could have been the next person starting the next Apple. You don't know, and you'll never know because you didn't get off the ground. So let's take that trip back in time with what your life looked like.
Yeah. So I guess let's back up a little bit more. I was actually a firefighter before being an entrepreneur. God put it on my heart to want to help people. In high school, I started going to evening classes and weekend classes at a local junior college. While I was still in high school, I was doing junior college. So that when I graduated high school, I'd done all my prerequisites and I went right into a department, was working at 19 years old, had my whole life figured out, got in a bad car accident at 21 that put me in a wheelchair temporarily. It took me about a year to physically, go to physical therapy and rehab to be able to walk without a crutches, a cane, or a wheelchair. And it was in that down and out season that I had to reinvent myself. And so in the spring of 2005, I had regained my mobility. I my independence. I mean, the accident was really bad. I actually had to move back into my parents' house because immediately following, when I couldn't walk, I couldn't feed myself. You get it. So by the spring of 2005, I was back independent, mobile, moving around. I got my real estate license because I wanted to be in real estate. I accidentally went to a 2-day real estate training thinking that if it's real estate, everyone must do the same thing. And I accidentally walked into a real estate investor workshop. So here I am, a brand new realtor, talking to a bunch of investors, and realized by the end of that 2 days, I didn't want to be a realtor. I want to be an investor. So pitched my dad on quitting his corporate job and becoming my business partner. Again, the year was 2005. And in that time, real estate was exploding. My dad realized that his house had made more in equity in Orange County, California is where I live. So in Southern California, 2004 and 5, my dad's value of his house went up higher than his salary, if that makes sense. He's like, dude, my house went up hundreds of thousands of dollars and it made more money than I did going to work. Yeah, let's do it, Cole. So he quit his job. And right place, right time, we had explosive success because in June of 2005, when we started our business, real estate was so hot that I could buy a house for any price I want. And whether I renovated or not, I would immediately get offers for more than I paid. My dad and I would literally close on a house and be waiting on permits with the city before we could start demo and get an offer for like 80 grand more than we had just paid for it the week before. And we'd run the numbers and be like, dang, we were about to own this thing for 6 months, put 200 grand of renovation into it. All the carrying costs, we would have made about 100, or I could just dump it right now for 80, game on, you know? And so it wasn't that we were special, literally just right place, right time. And then any of the buyers on the back end after we would flip these properties could qualify for any loan. Because for those of you that are old enough to remember, 2005 and 6, stated income, stated asset, 100% financing. Anybody who wanted the house could walk into the bank and afford it because you would just say whatever you needed to say to get the loan, and they would finance 100% of your purchase price. You didn't even need a down payment, which was predatory lending and ended up crashing our economy in 2008. But I didn't know any better. I was like, dude, this is awesome. All we have to do is like whisper that the house is for sale, and we have a line of people around the block that can qualify for financing. Let's go. Did a bunch. I mean, and I was a total idiot. I was in my early 20s making, my dad and I, the business was doing 7 figures, but because we were partners, I was making multiple 6 figures, maybe, $500,000, 600 grand a year at 22, 23, 24 years old. So total idiot, spent it all, would call all my buddies, tell them to meet me at the airport, buy all of their flights to Vegas, pay for all of our hotel rooms, give them money and be like, let's go party. They thought I was the coolest guy ever. And I don't say that to brag. I mean, I was literally lighting money on fire. And why that matters is 2008 came, and you already know what happened. Real estate market corrected. The economy crashed. I had no money because I'd spent it all, and I got destroyed. And so lost everything, even lost a property to foreclosure, one of my rentals, because the tenant moved out and I couldn't afford to carry the property as an empty. Had to get rid of my cars as quickly as I could, dump my wakeboard, but like it was just bad. And then fast forward, I eventually quit my real estate business. I sat my dad down in 2010 and said, dude, I'm over this. And I resigned from my own company, and I moved to Mexico and became a missionary. True story.
Wow.
I was down there. I was building houses for homeless families with a nonprofit, and then ended up starting my own orphanage. Did that for a while, came back 2011. I'm giving you literally like a 15-year journey.
That's okay, because what you just said there, that clearing of your head, going down and doing something for others, giving was probably the greatest thing you could have done at that point in time. You just lost it all. And, instead of just wallowing in everything that you just had happen, you decided to go give.
Totally.
There's an important takeaway in that.
Totally. And what's interesting is I didn't go down there with that being the intention. I went down there to run. So another thing is my girlfriend at the time broke up with me. She and I dated basically the whole time I was broke. I lost everything 2008. She and I started dating 2009. So it wasn't like she left because the money was gone. The money was never there. But because I was in the right place emotionally, and because I was still dealing with baggage from losing friends and things in my past, I just basically told her, hey, I'll date, but it'll never be more serious. She's like, cool, no offense. I want it to have a future. So if it's not with you and with someone else, then you're out. So she cut me or dumped me. Business sucks, lost everything. So I was like, screw it. I have no reason to stay here. And like I said, I went to Mexico. I missed that girl, want to get back. So I came back to America, asked her to marry me. She said, yes, thank you very much. And it's now 2011. I got some coaching, and from a mutual friend of ours, Bob, he and my mutual friend, Than, got some coaching, restarted my real estate business, fast forward, and made millions of dollars. And so, again, that was huge Cliff Note version. There's a lot of details in there that I flew through very quickly, but where I got to, and the point I was trying to get to in the story is, once I was making money again in real estate, I realized that having all your marbles in one basket is vulnerable. And number one, I only knew how to make money in real estate in an up market, which is easy. Anybody can buy something, wait a minute, and sell it for more money. But I realized I didn't actually know how to invest in real estate because I'd gotten my butt kicked in the debt market. So that was number one. Number two was again, I can't have all my marbles in one basket. So number two was, what can I do with my resources, my network, my experiences to start these other companies? And so fast forward, and as we've already covered, that's what I'm doing today. So, and by the way, still doing real estate. I didn't give up on it. I took a brief 10-month hiatus to go be a missionary and clear my head, as you said. I did not go down there to get healing. It's not like I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to Mexico and fix myself. I was like, my girlfriend dumped me. My business sucks. I don't even have a car anymore. Screw it. I'm going down to Mexico. And as a result of just giving without any expectation of anything, like my orphans, they could have never repaid me. Not doing it on social media. I didn't even have an Instagram account at this point in my life. Like, just doing it because I wanted to serve, because I was like, I can't make money anymore, so I might as well go down and help people. And I think that intention was where I got my healing. So for anybody listening to this right now who's like, you know what, I'm going through something. I'm going through a divorce, or I'm going through a bankruptcy, or whatever it is in one of your listeners' lives right now. If you try to go and be generous for the wrong reasons, like you're just going to document it on social media to look cool, you probably won't get the same result I did, where I was changing these people's lives. But at the end of the day, I was the one that was getting the most reward. And so to your point, I did that, cleared my head, got better, came back, married my ex-girlfriend, never asked her to be my girlfriend again. She had dumped me, and I just said, cool, will you marry me? And the rest is history, bro.
That is awesome. So I'd never heard that story. I mean, I knew bits and pieces of that, you know, the education, the real estate thing, the big pop you had in the beginning, but I didn't know the missionary. I didn't know you went down there and started doing all that stuff. That's phenomenal. And, you know, in those moments when you feel like there's nowhere else to go because you feel like a failure, there's so many of us that have been there. I've done almost 80 different podcasts with some rock stars like yourself. And the funniest thing about every single podcast, with the exception of a couple, every single one that's been on this show has had that same roller coaster. And they learned the most at the bottom. They found themselves, they got clarity, and they learned that they had to do, you know, the things that they didn't know they had to do to get back where they were. And yours is no different, which just further solidifies what we were talking about. Is in anyone's journey, like, don't be afraid to fail. Failure is going to happen whether you want it or not. And when it happens, just be ready for it and learn from it. Don't wallow in your pity. Just take what you learned from failing and excel from that, because that's how it's done. So in that entire journey, when you had all this stuff going on, I don't care if it's good, bad, indifferent, but what was your biggest obstacle internally that you had to go through during that? I mean, maybe it was when you lost it all and you had to sell all the cars and everything. What was that biggest internal obstacle that you had?
I'm going to say the biggest internal obstacle was one of the details that I brushed over and we didn't talk about, but that car accident that put me in a wheelchair. I survived, but my best friend did not survive that accident. He was driving the car. I was a passenger. The car flipped. We were ejected. And so I lost him. 66 days later, I lost a second friend in an accident I was in. So in 66 days, I was in 2 accidents where I lost my 2 best friends. So I had a tremendous amount of grief, but I had even more guilt because both times I was the only survivor. And so anybody listening to this that, like, to get the phone call today that whoever your best friend is had passed would crush all of you. It would destroy all of you. But to be in the accidents with them and the only one that survives twice in 2 months, it put me into this like soul crushing guilt. And so I decided, screw it. I went through some self-destruction. I don't know how long we have to get in this podcast. So I don't want to
go too deep, man. Just go.
So after my car accident with Steve, the first friend that I lost on September 10th, that was when I was in the wheelchair. I was so hurt that they gave me like morphine pills and all this stuff. Once the pain went away, I didn't take the pills anymore, and I had them. Once I'd gotten out of a wheelchair and onto crutches, Matt said, "Let's go ride dirt bikes because you can finally walk again." And I was like, "Dude, I'm on crutches." He's like, "Yeah, but dirt bikes, you sit on them. Let's go." So he was just trying to get me back in the routine. Long story short, he convinced me. He loaded our dirt bikes in the truck. We went out to the desert. I live in Southern California. The desert's about an hour and a half away. And so we're out there, we're putting around real slow, and we fell into an abandoned mine shaft. he fell all the way down on my way and I grabbed a bush. And so after losing Steve 66 days earlier and now Matt, I got into this really bad spot where I was like, screw it. And I was not suicidal. I didn't write a note. I didn't actually want to die, but I didn't want to be alive. I was in this place that's like, I'm not going to hang myself or on purpose hurt myself, but I'm just going to be reckless. And so I still had bottles of morphine pills left over from the car accident from 2 months earlier. So I just started popping pills and drinking alcohol because I would fall asleep at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon and I wouldn't wake up until like 11 a.m. the next day. So I was just alive less. And then from 11 to 4, I couldn't feel anything because I was all strung out on morphine and all the crap that I was taking. So I was self-medicating, and I realized in about a month later of doing that, it was December 18th. So a month after Matt, 3 months after Steve passing, I realized, it wasn't like Scrooge with the Christmas movie where you see your past, present, and future, but I saw pretty clearly what my future would look like, in the sense that if I continued taking pills, feeling sorry for myself, being a victim, drinking alcohol and all that crap, that I would accidentally overdose or just be a piece of crap the rest of my life. And that was no way to honor Steve and Matt, that like feeling sad is appropriate. Feeling guilty to a degree is appropriate, but throwing my life away is inappropriate. And was I going to let these circumstances control me, or was I going to take control of my life again? So I decided to take control of my life, let all that grief and guilt be a motivator instead of a handicap. And that's when I made the mental shift to go into business, which is what we already talked about, that it resulted in me being a real estate investor in 2005. So again, Steve and Matt passed in the fall of 2004. I started my real estate investment business in June of 2005. That was like when I was back. I was still using a cane, but I was like back, like, independent, driving cars again, all that stuff. So for me, bro, like, there was a long answer to your question. Hopefully,
but that's good, because it's a ton of value, and people need to hear that, because I'm sure there's someone that's going to watch this that's had that thing happen and they just can't find their way out. They just don't know what the answer is. And it's tough when you're at that place. It's very difficult to find your way out.
Right. So here's some advice I would give people that are in that spot, because this is supposed to be about money and real estate, and we'll get back to that in a second, but sometimes life issues are what people need most. And so if you're in a spot where you just feel stuck, whether it's depression, anxiety, like sadness, whatever it all is, it's super important to like kind of step back and evaluate your circumstances without being in it. Like, remove yourself from the forest so you can actually see the trees, or whatever it is. You can't see the trees through the forest through the trees, whatever the analogy is.
Forest through the trees.
Yeah, there you go.
You had it right.
Remove yourself from it and just ask yourself a couple of questions. Like, whatever the circumstances are, regardless of it, because I'm trying to be as broad, whether it's even things that are horrible, like being a parent, losing a child, which I hope I never have to experience. I have 2 beautiful little girls. Like, dude, just understanding that some things don't have an answer, that some things don't make sense. If you believe in God and you're like, God, why would you let this happen? Like, there's just some conversations we're going to have to wait to get to heaven to get the answers for. So number one, like being okay that you don't have all the answers. And then number 2, deciding like, is how I feel the best behavior for the circumstance I'm in? For me, is throwing my life away the best way to honor Steve and Matt, who had passed? If Steve or Matt could have switched places with me and I died and they survived, would I be okay with them just taking pills and drinking alcohol? No. So I put it as like a responsibility on myself to live a bigger, better life for them. And then, ask yourself a question like, is being a victim going to serve me, my family, my business, my life, whatever it is? Or is it going to harm me? And then the last thing too, and for big life circumstances like Steve and Matt, it's a little bit different, but maybe you just lost your job or whatever it is, and that's what's bothering you. The last thing you need to ask yourself is, 1 year from today, is this even going to matter? That's something I started doing maybe a year or so ago. And 90% of the stuff that bothers me, actually in a year, it wouldn't matter. I mean, honestly, losing Steve and Matt still bothers me 15 years later. So not everything will be a no. But probably 85 to 90% of the things that really get you down, if you just stopped and said, is this going to matter 1 year from today? It almost never does. And I mean, just you get stuck in traffic, which makes you lose your flight, and you have to get rebooked for the next morning, and you're freaking pissed. Cool. 1 year from today, is that actually going to matter? No. So then just let it go and only focus on what you can control.
I like that.
A lot of inner work to get through what I've gone through. And those will be the CliffNet versions for anybody who feels stuck. It's like, just have like an internal dialogue with yourself and say, is how you feel and how you're acting the best way to honor the people you've lost or to deal with your situation? Almost never is. And so then it's like, cool, find the motivation to change.
Yeah, I used to get stuck in those ruts, whether it was traffic, could be anything. I mean, something bad happens at one of the flips you're doing, contractor steals money from you, and you think the world's ending and you just go off on a tangent. And then, sometimes you got to just take a step back and you won't realize it until several weeks, months, years later. That happened for a reason. Maybe you needed to learn something. Maybe, that traffic prevented you from getting in an accident, that would have happened if there was no traffic. You just never know. But that's the way you got to look at life. Everything in life happens for the exact right reason at the exact right time. But you said it. That sometimes makes no sense. And sometimes that actually sounds terrible to have someone say that to you, but that's the way you got to look at things. Totally. As hard as it is, or as hard as it's not, that's just what it is. So with that, I mean, that's incredible. Thank you for sharing that. Being, open and transparent like that says a lot about you. And I know my audience is really, really going to appreciate that. So when you were on this journey and you guys, in 2005, you started this real estate company. I mean, California, even in 2005, was not a cheap market. So money had to play a part into this whole journey. Like how were those first deals funded? How did you scale that business? Where was the money coming from? And what was that like?
OPM, baby. So
there you go.
So a lot of people, that's what they say, Cole, I can't afford real estate. It's like, cool, I couldn't either. And even now that I can, I still don't use my own money. And so I was 21 years old when I started this business. What do you think my network looked like? Bunch of broke college kids. I didn't have a rich uncle. My parents were doing well for themselves, but my parents couldn't fund our deals. So what I'm getting at is I was no different than anybody. I didn't have the money and I didn't know anybody with the money. So there's a gentleman that went to our church, drove the nicest car in the parking lot. I figured I'd start with him. True story. And I had heard through at that time I was at a church of maybe 600-700 people. So each Sunday would have 350 people there. So it's small enough that you kind of recognize everybody's faces each Sunday, but you don't know everybody, if that makes sense. And so I knew this guy, every single Sunday he wore slacks and a sports coat. So he looked put together. He drove a Mercedes 500 at the time. And so the big body Benz. And I had heard that he was in real estate. So one day at the freaking donut coffee table, I was like, hey, man, what do you do? He said, I'm a real estate attorney. I was like, makes sense. That's why you're always in a coat. I didn't say this, but that's in my brain. I'm like, that's why you're always wearing a sports coat. That's why you drive a big body Benz. Got it. I told him, well, hey, bro, I'm interested in doing real estate. Would you ever, at the end of church, go out to brunch or lunch, whatever you want to call it, with me and let me pick your brain? And maybe it was just out of obligation that I was a fellow church member that he would give me his time for free. But he said, yes, not that Sunday, but the following week we scheduled it. We went to this little restaurant called Coco's, which I don't even know if the franchise still exists, but it's a little like IHOP diner here in Southern California. And I pitched him on being our lender, of saying, hey, my dad and I are going to do all the work. You're never going to have to lift a finger. You're going to put in the money and we'll split it 50-50. Long story short, he agreed, but he said that he would want, the right of refusal. So we started bringing a bunch of deals. He kept saying no, because he wasn't comfortable with them. Finally, we brought a deal that the margins and the location and everything made sense, where he's like, okay, I feel good on this. We put the money in, we flipped it, and the rest was history. So he was incredibly expensive, because when you look at what you can borrow money with, private money, hard money, and things like that, a joint venture 50-50 partner was way more expensive than if I had just borrowed the money and paid a lender an interest rate. However, for me at the time, it was better to get 50% of something than 100% of nothing. Then we eventually renegotiated and we said, well, there's two of us, me and my dad, and one of you, the attorney. So let's make this more of a partnership and go three ways. He was willing to do that, to go from 50 down to 33.33%. So then we started flipping deals, and he would make a third, I would make a third, my dad would make a third. And he went on to fund the first 20 deals I did in my career.
Wow.
Then I finally ended up getting some education, found out that there are things called private lenders, hard money lenders, and started borrowing money at a lower interest rate. Of course, I went back to him and said, hey, instead of being a partner, do you just want to lend us money at these interest rates? He said at that point it wasn't interesting to him. So we parted as friends. We're actually still friends to this day, but I went and got cheaper money. And so that was it. And why I go into the detail is because one of the number one reasons, I think there's two reasons people don't start real estate. They don't have deals. They don't have money. Well, deals is about marketing, and you got to learn how to do marketing. But money, people assume that the only people that do real estate must just have money. But they forget that even Warren Buffett had to raise his first dollar. So then they assume, well, you must have rich parents or rich uncles or aunts. I knew nobody with money. I just was willing to have the uncomfortable conversation with basically a stranger from church at a coffee table, or at a Coco's little diner, knees shaking underneath the table when I was asking to fund my deals. And he basically said, I'm interested, start sending me deals. And literally the first 4 or 5 deals, he straight up said no. but I didn't give up. I kept looking for deals. And then finally, the first deal came that made enough sense that he pulled the trigger. And so I am nothing special. I didn't get an inheritance. I wasn't born to the right person, right family, right anything. I just had uncomfortable conversations until I found the money. And that is duplicatable for anybody on this podcast listening to this right now. And if you don't have that guy, well, try going to church more often, I guess.
And you said so many things, and I'm just going to highlight just a few, but every single no you got was one step closer to a yes. He said no to how many deals, then he got a yes. And that one yes catapulted the rest. The other thing you said is at that line, that donut and coffee line, you didn't sit there and say, hey, would you like to lend me money? That would be asking for money. You said, can I take you to lunch, or can we do lunch? And can I present an opportunity to you that potential? And in your mind, you're probably thinking, I have an opportunity, which is I want to do real estate and I want to make you money. And you basically didn't know his problem, but doing lunch, you found out what maybe some of his problems were. And one of them is he just wanted to make more money. And you then solved his problem. That is the oldest thing in the book that nobody seems to understand, because people think when they need money, they go ask for it. They ask their parents, they ask their rich uncle, they ask the person at church that looks like they have money, but they start wrong. They start by asking. Don't ever ask for money. Solve a problem. Solve somebody's problem. Even if you don't know what it is, find out. Find out what keeps them up. Find out what it is they're working toward, and then find a way for your opportunity to solve that problem. And once you change that mindset and you start doing that, you will find that you'll be a magnet. So that was that first person. He did 20 deals, which that might be out of the norm, okay, that he could do 20 deals. But after that, you opened the door and you started learning there's other sources. There is so much money.
It wasn't 20 deals at once. It was over the next probably 18 months. He funded a total of 20. But to be clear, yeah, he did have quite a bit of cash. And then also he had access to it. So the returns were so good that we were giving him initially with that 50% and then eventually the 33%, because he had other buddies throw money in too, where I assume he did some type of rev share on his end. I don't know, but he's
probably doing what we're doing today. He's probably out there. He found you guys. He did the testing on the first deal, trusted you. And then he probably went out and raised more money with his group, his social network. Yeah. And then he basically took that money, pulled it together, and came to you, which is probably why when you offered him just interest, it wasn't interesting, probably because he just couldn't generate enough to make it worth his time and energy. Which totally. Nothing wrong with that. You just open the next door. That was awesome. And the other thing you said is there's so many people that stop there because it's uncomfortable. Talking to somebody about that you don't know, having that discussion about your opportunity, that's super uncomfortable. People are not used to doing that. I mean, you and I, because we speak on stages across the country, might be used to that, but the average person, that's a very, very scary, like you were saying, knee-knocking experience. But the best way to do it is just get it out of the way. Rip the Band-Aid off. Do it. If you hear a no, be thankful that you heard a no, because then your next one, maybe it'll be a yes or a no, and it doesn't matter. Just keep going till you get that yes. There's a quote I always like to say, and it's a quote by Will Rogers, and it says, the problem in America is not what people don't know. The problem is what people think they know that just ain't so. And that's the biggest truth that there is out there, because so many people think that if they're going to go out there and show an opportunity, they're going to hear a no, and that fear turns them away. You just don't, you think you know what you don't know. You have no idea what the outcome will be, and you will never know until you do it. So that was a great story. And I think at the end, and I know you've taught it and I teach it, but money is everywhere. Money is literally the least difficult thing in the real estate business. Finding the deal right now, that might be one of the hardest things. Getting your mindset right to actually take that step to do it, that might be one of the hardest things, which is another reason, like I'm going to transition right now, because a lot of my personal development has been through putting myself in weird predicaments and surrounding myself around people that were doing what I wanted. People that are doing what I wanted were at events. They were at masterminds. And every single one of these events, every single one of these masterminds, and every single one of these trainings cost money. And, successful people do two things very well, and only two things. They invest their time and they invest their money. That's what they do. And unfortunately, that's what you have to do, folks. Anyone that's watching this, we had to do it. You have to take that step. So Cole's got this event, Thrive. You may not know what Thrive is, or maybe you do. It's not just some little event. There are rock stars going to be at this. These are the people that if you show up there, even if you're nervous and you want to sit all the way in the back, sit in the back, observe, but just start 3 or 4 conversations while you're there. Just start conversations about what it is you're there for. Be transparent and open. People love people that are transparent and open. When you are vulnerable, people want to hear your story. They want to help you. Don't think it's any other way. When you come in there and you beat your chest saying, oh, I'm doing this and I'm crushing it, nobody wants to talk to you, man. Nobody does. You're no better than anyone else. And the next person you talk to probably is 10 times ahead of where you're at. But that doesn't matter. Be vulnerable and transparent when you do this. So this event, Thrive, and it's May 1st and 3rd. I mean, I've witnessed it from afar, but I have a friend that's very deep into this and he tells me everything about it. Can you just tell my audience what this is? Because so many people need to be at this event. Coronavirus, whatever. I mean, just go. Wash your hands a bunch. Don't open palm anything. Like knuckle things, elbows. Just get it done. Wear a mask if you want to on the plane. But what will they get there? I know Ed Milet's going to be one of the speakers, and I had the luxury of speaking on stage with him. That man is a beast. You got to hear his story. That freaking old Mercedes.
Oh, yeah, where he like duct taped it on.
Duct taped it? Yeah. Oh, the Chrysler LeBaron.
Yeah. So, Ed speaking, Eric Thomas, #1 motivational speaker on earth, Tim Grover, author of Relentless, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan's coach. The speaker lineup's insane. And so a bunch of people from TV, like Tarek from Flip or Flop, he's had 9 seasons of that. And so other than just the speaker lineup, the whole point of Thrive is just to, like you said, bring amazing people together from all over the world for 3 days to learn how to grow their business. And then what we do is our theme of the event is called Make Money Matter, where we don't just want our audiences to learn how to make money, but how to make it matter. And that's by creating a for-purpose business where you're not just crushing numbers and buying stuff, which is fine, but there's an extra element where you've built in some type of a charitable aspect or cause in the business model itself. Tom's Shoes is the most famous example. When they hit market, for every pair of shoes they sold, they gave a pair away. And so although, Blake Mikowski, the founder of Tom's, he built in the economic model the little buffer to be able to afford to give that second pair of shoes away for free. So that's fine. You pass that on to the consumer. But the way that it was built in, truly, the more money he made, the more successful he was, the more shoes he sold, the bigger the impact was. And that's what really separates Thrive from the other events, in addition to the fact that nobody sells anything. I literally have my speakers sign a contract saying they won't sell anything. So it's exhausting to go to these big events that are just sales pitches where you've got one speaker after the next that dangle carrots. They talk broad concepts and not real specifics. And then if you want the specifics, you got to run to the back and buy their fill in the blanks. We don't do that at Thrive. Ed Milet and all these guys come from all over to give you their absolute best content. And then at the end, there is no pitch. They just say thank you, and the next speaker comes out. And so for anybody out there who's serious about getting information to grow their business, to do better in life and all that good stuff, Thrive is the best event out there in the world because, to your point, it's not a little rinky-dinky event. We're supposed to have 1,500 to 2,000 people this year, and we'll see how long the media is going to exaggerate and blow up the whole coronavirus thing. Not to belittle it. It is, an illness like anything else. But when you look at the numbers compared to basically stubbing your toe or anything else, like, it's about that dangerous. But hey, the media likes to rant and rave about things. So we'll see how it goes. It's a great event. It's been around for 6 years, so it's got credibility. And as you've said, thousands and thousands of people have come through. And at the result of 6 years, it's rated the #1 must-attend event for entrepreneurs.
Yeah. And, for those of you watching that know my story, I mean, I wouldn't be where I'm at today if I didn't go to events like Thrive. These events are what catapult your business faster, smarter, and more efficiently. And if you avoid these events or you don't go to these events because maybe you don't want to spend the money to go, maybe, you live on the East Coast and it's a flight to the West Coast and there's coronavirus, you're never going to see what was possible if you went and surrounded yourself around these people. These are high-level people, but these are the people that you need to be around. It's so cliche, but your network equals your net worth. Like, there's a lot of truth to that. The people you're around are the people that are going to take you there, and if they're doing what you want, you got to be at a place like this. So it's May 1st to the 3rd. We'll give you the link. And don't you have something else going on where, like, did you rent like a whole nightclub for this event?
Yeah, for Saturday night. So part of the value of going to events is learning stuff. But if we're being totally honest, if you spent the rest of your life on YouTube and podcasts like this, you would probably learn everything they talk about at Thrive. And I'm totally transparent with that. I come out on day one and I tell that to everybody. But for me personally, when I'm physically present in a room, the same information that I could have heard while jogging through headphones, it just resonates more because I'm there, like, mentally focused on getting every nugget. So that's number one. But number two, the real value of an event is the networking. I get that. All of the speakers, Ed Milet, all these guys have their own YouTube channels, have their own podcasts, where a lot of their content, again, if you want to spend the time, you can find it. What Thrive does is it expedites that process and gives you the best people on the earth just giving you their best content, right? If you were an Ed Milet and have 1 million hours worth of content, but I give you 60 minutes on stage, you're going to pick your best 60 minutes. So you get the best content. But again, the real value is the networking. So we spend a ton of extra money. And when I say a ton, we're talking tens of thousands of dollars that we don't need to spend to rent extra space to create an actual networking lounge where there's a designated area where the group can network with one another. And then we rent out the Hakkasan nightclub at the MGM Grand on Saturday night to, again, give you guys a place. Because when the event ends, 2,000 people disperse all over the strip. But when there's a new spot for you to go, like, hey, come to this place at this time, everyone collects. And that's where you can meet someone in the ballroom very briefly. But this is where you and I can have a beer together and actually like chat about business and see where we can help each other. So that's the real value of events. If you're asking me straight up, like, why should people in 2020 even go to events? The number one motive shouldn't be to learn something new. It should be to meet someone new. And so it's important to go to events that have taken that into consideration and have made an effort to make networking easier for you.
Absolutely. And that's why you see so many masterminds out there, because that's how people are connecting and that's how they're actually getting these relationships. And these relationships are changing people's lives. This event could change your life. The question is are you going to go? Cole, is there a link that they can use to get tickets and register?
Yeah, attendthrive.com is our website. So you guys could just hit up attendthrive.com and I'll have them make a promo code for you, REMS, for Real Estate Money School. REMS, I believe, is available. So if they want to use R, like real estate, REMS, they'll save on their tickets. So awesome. I'll make sure that I'll make a note right now to do that.
So for all of you, attendthrive.com, use promo code REMS for Real Estate Money School. We'll make sure that that's put in the notes too, so that every time you check this podcast out, you'll be able to click and get it. But don't wait. Don't wait for this podcast to go, viral so that everybody else gets it and the place sells out. Get your tickets the second you hear this. Just stop, drop, and get your damn tickets. So with that being said, man, there's been a lot of golden nuggets, just an unbelievable story there. And I appreciate, again, you sharing that and kind of going deep into that, because that's the stuff that really matters. And that's the stuff that makes people realize, like, the struggles that we all go through in life and in business, and how it just makes us stronger. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Absolutely, bro.
All right. For all of you watching this, remember, from the beginning, I said, get going and take action. It's time for you to be a rebel banker, and it's time for you to change your life. And this is where it starts. So make it happen, folks. Thank you for joining me for the Real Estate Money School. And thank you, Cole, for joining us. And we will see you all at Thrive. Thank you.